Aloha.
I want to thank you for coming out. It's been a long time, very long time, and far and few between since the Department of Health has even bothered to come out here and talk to us, hear what we have to say, or help us in any way.
Can you hold it a little closer?
So after 44 years, I've been doing this for 44 years, since 1981. So going through this permitting process with DOH, I have no illusion that anything I say or produce will be seriously considered by the Department of Health, and I'll get into why here in a minute. The PGV will get this permit. The decision has already been made. It has always been that way for 44 years. This hearing is a formality, and we all know it. My comments do create a record, so at some point, when PGV kills or hurts residents, I hope the Department of Health will be held accountable. The first hearing on PGV was in 1989 in Kona. The community overwhelmingly testified against PGV's permit at the Hawaii County Planning Department hearing. Dwayne Kanuha was the planning director. Most of the residents from the surrounding communities have been poisoned by HTPA for 8 years. Department of Health, under then Director Jack Lewin, refused to do anything to protect us. And Department of Health Deputy Director Dr. Bruce Anderson instead called us rabidly anti-geothermal because we simply asked for help and wanted some protection. And as you heard earlier, we were labeled hippies or whatever, anything to dehumanize us so you could help PGV. And not you personally, but it's been a long time. So let's see here. Anderson never lifted a finger once to help us, monitor releases or protect us in any way. Director Lewin and Deputy Anderson ingrained the culture of how DOH attacks on our community and have prevailed to this day. After 44 years in opposition, the opposition is generational and has included many thousands of residents, all dismissed by Department of Health, as will undoubtedly be the result again here. To again help PGV at our expense, throwing us under the bus since day one. These facts are both well documented and egregious. I have been directly adversely impacted by PGV development accidents, well cleanouts, and operations since 1991. My health, home, quality of life have been degraded as a direct result of PGV's well drilling, development accidents, emergency evacuations, lack of a working community evacuation notification system, or evacuation plan. PGV has their own evacuation plan for themselves, but there's nothing for the community. By PGV normal operations. These impacts have been compounded as a direct result of negligence, intentional lack of meaningful regulation or oversight, and corruption of my contested case rights by the Department of Health. I have had to sue Department of Health for relief, as in Lewin versus Aluli, where I was a plaintiff. The Hawaii Supreme Court ruled Department of Health failed to follow the law. Why does one of the poorest communities in Hawaii have to sue the Department of Health to simply get them to follow the law and protect the community? I'd like that answer. And that culture of lawlessness that began with Lewin and Anderson persists to this day, in my opinion, as someone who has dealt extensively with Department of Health for over 40 years. I say that with confidence. Dr. Sam Rubin worked at Department of Health several decades ago. He started a health survey study to see what impacts residents were being exposed to, the PGV pollution, exposed to pollution were having. Within a month, Department of Health shut down that study and shipped Dr. Rubin to Kwajalein Atoll for daring to actually do his job. And that was a warning to everybody at Department of Health. You better shape up. Don't rock the boat, because we'll send you out to an island in the middle of nowhere where they dispose of chemical weapons. So I'm in opposition to granting this permit at this time for the reasons mentioned and detailed in the further testimony. I am now and have been a resident of Pohiki area adjacent to PGV and the state experimentation geothermal power plant since 1981. I built a home there before HTPA began to operate. Living on the front line as one of the closest PGV neighbors for decades, I have experience in participating in geothermal development and the permitting process on every level, up close and personal. I do not need anyone to tell me what happened or rewrite history. I was there. I know what PGV and Department of Health did to me. In my experience and interactions, the Department of Health has been a hindrance and an obstacle that has obstructed me and the other residents at every opportunity. In my opinion, Department of Health has been and continues to be complicit in the harm to the surrounding community. I have unique first-hand knowledge and experience of this geothermal development in Pahoa HI. I participated in the permitting process at every opportunity for 4.5 decades. I have been exposed to toxins, poison many times by PGV. PGV has paid me damages 3 times. Yet the Department of Health has no recorded exposure levels for me, even after all the accidents, leaks, etc., because there is not a real monitoring program, as Chris Pitkoff will be able to tell you. What Department of Health claims is a monitoring system is in reality just 3 sampling stations that do not measure releases at the source or model resident exposure levels. Any independent expert will tell you that is not the ACT by any stretch of the imagination. The Department of Health has basically sanctioned the poisoning of area residents by failing to prevent or monitor exposure levels of residents in spite of the many requests, lawsuits, leaks, ventings, accidents, well bleeding, and intentional releases. Department of Health has essentially protected PGV at the resident's expense, in my opinion, and in my personal experience. The new permit appears to be more of the same, disregarding past lessons and residents' concerns for the benefit of PGV. PGV has been self-reporting, even with the worst history of declared emergencies, evacuations, litigation, and accidents of any power plant in Hawaii's history. Here, again, PGV is getting preferential treatment in the permitting process. 2 of the more well-known and notable disasters at PGV are the 1991 KS8 well blowout and uncontrolled beta release for 31 hours, as we've already heard, and other toxic pollutants as detailed in the state export investigation report by Goddard and Goddard. More recently, in 2014, Tropical Storm Marcel nearly destroyed the PGV power plant when PGV and Helco refused to take PGV offline. You know, I haven't been able to talk to you for 10 or 20 or 15 years, and now you want me to shut up?
I want you to be fair to everyone else in your
I don't think they agree with
Be fair. Be fair.
7 other people who want to testify.
You can have my time.
Can you turn his mic back on?
Who are you?
Sarah Hill.
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Carry on.
The storm not only knocked PGV offline and caused uncontrolled unabated releases that trapped the residents in our homes and prevented any first responders from helping the shocked residents. There was no escape. PGV's uncontrolled release of H2S and other toxic gases and substances left over a dozen residents unconscious for hours. Both of these disasters exposed there was no efficient, effective emergency response plan or training for the known risk and hazard that PGV presents to area residents. It's even more dangerous since 2018 eruption at PGV that effectively blocked evacuation routes for Pahoa residents like myself. A storm, Department of Health, PGV, Helco, and Civil Defense all knew was coming, injured over 100 area residents. We are going to get storms. Department of Health knows that. It's something very predictable that will happen, yet there we were. No emergency response, no help, no nothing. Left to be knocked unconscious and hurt, and PGV gives us a little bit of money, and you give them another permit. The air samplers were knocked offline and did not work during a cell. That was another failure that belongs to the Department of Health, the regulator. PGV being permitted to operate under those conditions was enabled and occurred as a direct result of the culture and negligence at the Department of Health. This is not a low-level problem. The problem starts at the top and seeps down, as Dr. Sam Rubin found out. Don't rock the Department of Health PGV boat or else. Department of Health still cannot produce an emergency response plan for residents as required that has been tested ever. Now Department of Health wants to issue a new permit even after everything the residents have endured over the last 44 years without first correcting their past ineffectiveness and our right and our right failure to protect the health and well-being of the area residents.
Lunatics.
PGV being self-regulating and no community emergency response plan or evacuation plan, there's never even been a test by Department of Health or Civil Defense to see what is needed. That's not an accident or an oversight after 44 years. It's intentional negligence by design. The result to myself and area residents from the Department of Health failures and negligence invited well-documented harms to the community. I was a member of the Adler Geothermal Working Group that produced the Adler report commissioned by Mayor Kanoe. Has Department of Health even read that? Testimony at previous hearings through the EIS process, contested cases, and the endless litigation for relief and meaningful regulation creates a constant, relevant historical record as one of the poorest communities in the state, burdened to have to litigate to get any meaningful protection is nothing less than economical discrimination. For the record of this permit hearing, I want to make clear, PGV and geothermal development in Hawaii has had more emergency declarations and evacuations, along with countless releases, accidents historically than any power plant in the history of Hawaii that I can find. Residents essentially are left to fend for themselves during upset conditions and emergency. That is my personal experience, as many other residents here can attest to as well. I have to have a go bag and be ready to run at a second's notice without any notification or help from the Department of Health, Civil Defense, or PGV. The restart conditions and recommendations of Goddard and Goddard, the experts hired after the PGV KS-8 blowout, have never been enacted or enforced to this day. There's still no emergency response plan for residents as required in the existing permit. I was a community first responder to PGV leaks, accidents, community complaints, and the 1991 blowout at KS-8 and KS-7. And that KS-8 wasn't the only blowout. They had another blowout at KS-7. They called it a kick instead of a blowout, but it was the same thing. Before that, I was a community responder to the nightmare HGPA experimental plant. In those 44 years, we have never had a monitoring system as evidenced by the zero data on individual exposure levels. DOH has been negligent in its responsibility to protect the community health, welfare, and quality of life. After countless accidents, intentional releases, and far more emergency evacuations than any other power plant in Hawaii history, the Department of Health cannot produce a single example of what I or any resident exposure levels are or have been. And that's because you don't have a monitoring system. You can call those samplers monitors, but that's not, where's the data? Show me what I was exposed to. You can't, because you don't have a monitoring system. You're helping PGV or hurting us. After over 4 decades of complaints, hearings, protests, and litigation, my only conclusion is that fact has to be by design. Gross incompetence, corruption, or a combination of all three. If there is a better, more accurate reason, I would like to hear it. After 44 years and all the promises and hearings for permits, Department of Health cannot show what any resident exposure level was, or any single event, or for the decades of repeated contamination and poisoning. This has been brought to both Department of Health and PGV's attention many times by residents, litigations, experts like Chris Bilkoff, and still, you still just go on about your way and rubber stamp the stuff, and you just don't hear us. Or we're just expendable. I mean, that's what we are, right? We're expendable. It doesn't matter, because that's what's happening. I helped successfully lobby Hawaii County Council for funding for community handheld H2S Jerome samplers, and was trained at Hawaii County Civil Defense to use them properly to take readings around the PGV power plant. I responded countless times to situations at PGV until the area was covered by lava in 2018. I'm almost done. After Pele shut down PGV in 2018, I returned the 2 monitors to the Department of Defense. Department of Health needs to provide new handheld monitors to this community so we can know what we're getting exposed to. And we need to be trained. So you give us the monitors and you train us, and we will take those readings.
Yep. Hey. Yes,
The lack of any documented historical community exposure level data for H2S, caustic soda, lead, mercury, radon, or other pollutants released during the many upset conditions, accident, intentional releases, and day-to-day operations at PGV, after more than 30 years of operation, proves conclusively that there's no actual working monitor program in place.